A little surprise live. I didn't plan on going live today, but as some of you know, we're moving. My family and I are moving back home to Baltimore, and I've been doing a lot of work on our house and got a good amount of it done. And so now I have some time tonight, and I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about a clip I came across of Thomas Sowell, and then also I want to go through a conversation in real time with you because I haven't actually read the responses, or I haven't read the comments that I've gotten from this brother. We agreed to have a conversation about some things, so I want to read through those comments with you and discuss some stuff together as I go through it. For best interaction with this live, go to YouTube. Go to our YouTube channel, Black and Blurred Podcast. You can go to our YouTube channel and you can actually interact. I can see your comments. If you're on Instagram, thank you for joining the live, but I can't see your comments, though you can see me. So I would like to see your comments and interact with you. So go over to YouTube, and then I can see you. And then I can see you, interact with you, all that good stuff. But because this was a surprise live, I didn't plan for it. I don't know how much of my battery on my camera I have. So let's jump into this. Let's look at this Thomas Sowell clip. Now, a lot of people are probably going to respond this way. I've seen these comments over the years when Black people reference Thomas Sowell. Oh, you're just referencing Thomas Sowell because everybody references Thomas Sowell. Here's the thing. When it comes down to something like this election, I think that you should consult the thinking of a lot of people who think well. I don't care if they agree with you on everything, but you can tell that they like to think. They like to put their thought, because when it comes down to this election and a lot of aspects of it, a lot of people are dissuaded from thinking. As a matter of fact, when it comes down to Black American populace, if you think, then they ridicule you and slander you and revoke your proverbial quote unquote Black card, because apparently thought process is not about the Black experience. Very stupid thought, but that's the way it is. And so people are dissuaded from thinking. People are dissuaded from asking questions. But when it comes down to important things in the world and worldview and things like that, I think you should consult individuals who think well, no matter what their conclusion is, and then think about what they just said and make your own decision. So we're going to consult Thomas Sowell on a conversation he had about President Donald Trump. Now, the context of this is Thomas Sowell was not a Donald Trump fan. I think a lot of individuals aren't particularly quote unquote fans of his, but I'm not talking about in the specific sense, in a personal sense, where it's like, oh, I don't like his character. No, Thomas Sowell thought he wasn't a good pick for president once upon a time. And so I haven't watched this conversation yet. I just saw the beginning of it. I was like, this would be cool to actually go through on a live. And so I'm going to react to it in real time with you guys. So let me share my screen. And let's make it way better than that. There we go. All right. Let's listen.
Be a rock star of the Republican Party now, but that does not mean he is a rock star to all Republicans. I want to quote a line from Thomas Sowell, the latest column he has in Town Hall. He's a best-selling author. Wealth, Poverty, and Politics is his latest missive. But in this, he writes, in a country with more than 300 million people, it's remarkable how obsessed the media have become with just one, Donald Trump. What is even more remarkable is that after 6 years of repeated disasters, both domestically and internationally, under a glib egomaniac in the White House, so many potential voters are turning to another glib egomaniac to be his successor.
Your friend, your longtime friend, Walter Williams. Now we come to current politics. The bottom line is that President Donald Trump does not have the personal character that we would want our children to imitate, but save his misguided international trade policies, has turned out to be a good president. Tom?
Now, really quickly, before he responds to that, the argument of personal character and president, I'm not going to say that doesn't matter. Once upon a time, it did matter, and it should still ought to matter. But I think the fact that it is fallen by the wayside is a reflection of our society today. There are a lot of principles that have fallen by the wayside. And you know why? Because the foundation has fallen by the wayside. The fact that this country acknowledged Christian principles. Even if everybody was not a Christian, they acknowledged Christian principles. Our public sector, even our public education, acknowledged biblical principles, acknowledged scripture. If you dig into the crates of public education, or education in general, but before public education was really booming, but even public education, even in places like Massachusetts and stuff like that, you would see that the curriculum involved scripture reading, that students would read the scriptures to learn how to read, to learn words. That's what they would use as the litmus test for a lot of different things. And we've completely tossed that out the window. So therefore, anything goes. As far as people from the left using the argument of, oh, public character or moral character, he doesn't have moral character, they don't have any legs to stand on. As a matter of fact, I mean, you look at someone like Bill Clinton. Let's start there. It's 30 years ago. It's wild. But yeah, let's Bill Clinton, when it comes down to what happened with him and Monica Lewinsky, I use the same type of thought process as I would use with a pastor, is that he was found out about these things regarding Monica Lewinsky. So it's not that incident with Monica Lewinsky is an isolated incident. It's that he was concealing his character from the public sphere. And then that became the rule of law. Conceal your fallen character. And then you get to Donald Trump and he doesn't conceal it. Now, I'm not saying he's a rabid animal in office, but he is not a polished politician. And what people argue is that, oh, well, he doesn't speak good like a politician. But what they really mean is that he doesn't conceal his character to the point of deception, the way that previous politicians have done it. I think it's a futile argument, really. However, who was that? Whitaker makes a great point that we need to acknowledge, and parents need to acknowledge, hey, when you think about different character aspects about Donald Trump, why don't you just say, hey, don't try to be like this in this specific instance. That's not what the president's job is. That's not what his job is.
I think his policies have been, by and large, policies that were far better than that of previous Democratic or Republican administrations.
So
I go by the consequences.
Okay.
I mean, he hasn't produced the right rhetoric, but the fact is that unemployment among low-income people, Black, Hispanic included, is at a level that is far lower than it's been in decades. The economy is booming in a way that no one had predicted. People like Paul Krugman was saying that when Trump gets in, the economy is going to tank. No, the economy hit new highs.
All right.
But there are so many people among the intelligentsia, especially, who are absolutely immune to facts. It's as if they took their anti-fact shots every year. And
that's pretty funny. I'm laughing a little bit about what he's saying, but then also the tone. I think there's some frustration there. I'm sorry. I can relate to it. I can relate to that. You have conversations with individuals, and it seems like when you start trying to release data and you're interested in statistics and facts. I know that's become a popular phrase and phraseology and rhetoric today, but man, there are so many people who are disinterested in what's true. There's so many people who are disinterested in what's true. I want to comment on a comment that I saw. First of all, shout out to you, Hattie. I know I would love to get Chad on Black and Blurred. I got to hit him up. Michael Flommer says, well, if Joe Biden was still in the running for president, a vote for Joey would be a no-brainer. We got to have a conversation, Joe, or Michael, I'm sorry, because I disagree. Because what's happening now, even going back to the character conversation, even though I made that comment about Donald Trump's character, the character conversation serves as a red herring. It serves as a red herring. You say, oh, but look at his character. So therefore, we can't vote for Donald Trump. So let's vote for the people who have values that diametrically oppose yours. Now, Michael, I don't know you. If your values are that of the same of Joe Biden's and Kamala Harris's, which they have the same values, then we have different values on a fundamental basis, from a fundamental basis. But if you are a Christian like me, then there are serious questions I would have. Serious questions. Why would it be a no-brainer? I'm even if Joe Biden was well off mentally, which he's not. So I don't know why that's a no-brainer. I don't know if you're being sarcastic. I don't know. Now I'm reading it. I don't know, Mike. I'm gonna continue to comment just in case others are watching. I don't know. This seems sarcastic though, because you got no-brainer capitalized. I think you're trolling a little bit, but yeah, his values diametrically oppose mine. So is Barack Obama. They diametrically oppose mine. I don't care if that Barack Obama is articulate and well off and dresses nicely and speaks in a nice little cadence like this and talks to people and tosses a football in his office and he had a pretty wicked jump shot instead of shooting crack rock. I don't care about that. I care about the policies. That's what I care about. Yeah, I figured no-brainer was a joke. It had to have been a joke. But yeah, so I care about the policies when it comes down to a sexual moral ethic promulgated on society. I know I have a sexual moral ethic, a biblical sexual ethic, and I don't say that everybody should be forced to that, but I believe it's the truth. I believe the Bible is the truth, so therefore I want to share that sexual ethic. I also believe that there are consequences going outside of what the Bible teaches regarding a sexual ethic, and we see those consequences all throughout society. But people ignore them. And Joe Biden and Kamala's platform also ignores it and tells people to go and do it more and more and more. Forget about the consequences. The Democrat platform is adverse to Christianity in general. I'm not saying that the Republican platform is the Christian platform, but they don't show an adversity to it. They show an indifference to it, I think, now, today, if we're honest. There's an indifference, I think. It's just traditionally Christian, but it's not Christian. So Christians need to be awake to that and make sure. But when it comes down to the Democrat platform, there is an adverse response. So that's necessary. I don't believe in the denial of objective truth. Transgenderism is the denial of objective truth. Oh boy, YouTube's going to take this down, but it's fine. It's a denial of objective truth. And I think that denying objective truth has consequences. I'm not just staking my flag in whatever my team says. It has consequences. And those consequences reflect themselves in the suicide rate of people who have transitioned. But we have to ignore it. I don't believe in the murdering of children. We have to deny objective truth in order to murder children. We have to say it's not a baby, it's a fetus, which is stupid. That's just Latin for the same thing. But we have to deny all these things and then bully people into that denial rather than stating factually that their side has a good point. You have to bully people. You got to censor stuff on YouTube and Instagram. You have to censor stuff on TV. You have to edit interviews. You have to deny interviews. This is all that's happening when it comes down to the opposite side. So the character aspect is a red herring for when people look at the platform and they actually go down the list and have a good discussion on that platform. If you are a believer, then that is a no-brainer. I can't side with it. But let's continue on.
The facts will just not affect us.
All right. One of the themes in wealth, poverty, and politics, isolation. You've already spoken a little bit about geography, isolation. You do this a dozen different times. You take different aspects of reality, economic reality, and explain how they affect economic development. So but of course we only have time for a few, but here, isolation. Quote, isolation is a recurring factor in poverty and backwardness around the world, close quote. And you note that people who live in mountains, Afghanistan, Appalachia, you couldn't ask for more separated mountain communities, and yet you see much the same kind of backwardness. Isolation per se leading to backwardness. Explain that.
Well, I don't so much explain it as I simply give enormous numbers of examples of it. The mountain people being one, people who are living in isolated islands like the Canary Islands. Back in the 15th century, when the Spaniards conquered the Canary Islands, they found the people there living as people had lived in the Stone Ages. In Australia, very similar things when the British arrived there in the late 18th century. They found the Australian Aborigines living again as people had lived elsewhere in the Stone Ages. Right. You find wherever there are enclaves of groups that are isolated from what other groups are doing, that you find the same thing: socially isolated, politically isolated, for whatever reason. What it suggests to me is that an individual really can do very little without a great number of other things, including what he learns from other human beings. And if you have some group of 3,000 or 2,000 living in some mountain village, whether in Italy or Kashmir, wherever, you're not going to find them keeping abreast of people who are living in port cities and in touch with the whole rest of the human race.
Okay, so trade is important?
Yes.
All right. Here's another. I offer.
So Thomas Sowell it's really profound the way he thinks through things, because the thickness of the I don't know, the rhetoric and the foolishness we have to really, sludge through when it comes down to the election. We'd be hard pressed ever getting to a conversation on this, and how trade matters, and in how a potential presidential nominee thinks through that, and the implications of their thought process. We deal in headlines today, and those headlines matter too. But when it comes down to the intricacies of the runnings of the country, the infrastructure, and also the survival and flourishing of its citizens, of her citizens, America's citizens, United States of America's citizens, we hardly get to that, because we've accepted so many macro forms of evil in society. And so now on the ticket are quote unquote worldview questions rather than political statements and political stances. They're questions on worldview. And that's the sad thing about the way a lot of, I guess a lot, but it's saddening when I see pastors and Christians respond to other pastors and Christians about not talking politics. First of all, it's hypocritical, because Democrats go into churches. Kamala was just at Jamal Bryant's church, who's not a pastor. He's a wolf. But, and that's, nobody cried. Nobody says boo. But when a pastor, for the love of his flock and the love of the sheep in the congregation, makes a statement on politics, which is not a political statement, but a statement on children, their welfare, on marriage, on society. These are charges given to the church to care for widows and orphans, women and children. The church's job, welfare, loving your neighbor as yourself, the church. It's a different episode on how that got into, conversations on politics, but it starts with the civil rights movement. And it's blended with Marxism, but that's a different conversation. But that's the church's role, and we've forgotten that. We don't even care about it. And so people call it political conversations. Yeah, okay. Well, I want to share with you guys a conversation. Let's have a conversation together. We're gonna walk through a conversation. Let me I'll read some comments at the end. I want to get through this because I don't know how much battery I have left. Let me see if I can pull up. Oh, I can't. Oh, yes, I can. Let's see. So there's a gentleman who has been on our Instagram page, and in the beginning, he was kind of like, he just disagreed in more in a trolling way, where he would just take some shots at us. I don't really care for much about that. But I will engage individuals. If you've ever been a troll on a Black and Blurred page, then you know that I reach out to you personally. Well, we might have some banter in the comment section, but I hate really typing a lot on my phone. And then also, I believe that social media has been weaponized. I think it has really destroyed our society. And so if I'm going to continue to use social media, I want to be a light on it. I'm going to say hard-hitting things. If you follow Black and Blurred, you know that we're going to talk about the truth, and we're going to say it unapologetically. We're going to say it in love, but we're not going to conceal it with ambiguity in taking 10,000 steps to just take 2 steps and just say the thing directly. However, if people have a genuine problem with what we say, I want to hear them. I don't want you getting on the comment section just saying, oh, you ain't black. Come up with something beneficial. If it's actually beneficial that I change my mind and think like you, then you need to present an argument, and I'm willing to hear you. And so that's what I presented to this gentleman, and he was gracious and humble enough to actually receive it. But because of his work, it's hard to get a schedule around, and because of my transition and the busyness, so he has sent some comments to me, and I want to read them and walk through them with you guys as soon as I can find them. I think I can find them. Yeah. All right. I wonder if, I don't know if you guys will be able to see. I don't know if you guys will be able to see if I can share, but I'm going to read through them. I guess I'm going to try to share it anyway. And if you can't see, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, y'all. But I'm going to share it anyway. So, and you know what? I said that I was going to read these on a podcast, and he didn't oppose. So I hope this is okay, D. I didn't specifically ask, hey, can I do this? So I hope it's okay. But I told him I was going to share it, so I'm doing it now. But this is what he told me. He said this is him explaining his grievance against us. Let me see if I can make it bigger. This is him explaining his grievance against us. He said, you and your brother have both stated that the Democratic Party started slavery. And while that is factually true, well, that's not what I said. And that's also not factually true. They didn't start slavery. Slavery was a worldwide thing. Now, chattel slavery is different, and it wasn't started by the Democrat Party. It was proliferated and promulgated by the Democrat Party. But I get what he's saying. While that's factually true, the ideals of the Democrat Party, first of all, I'm going to say this. I don't like calling it Democratic Party. It's not Democratic at all. The reason Kamala is on a ticket is why it's not Democratic. It's the Democrat Party. But I digress. The ideals of the Democratic Party at its start and the party that stands today no longer align in ideology. I believe that to push that statement is both intellectually dishonest and it goes against your very own principles. All right. So he's saying, let me back up. He's saying that while we address that the Democrat Party's origins is the party of slavery, racism, and Jim Crow, he's saying while that is true, the Democrat Party that stands today no longer aligns with those ideologies. Now, I don't know what you mean by that because Jim Crow is gone, I guess. But the ideologies are less than. People are less than. That's how chattel slavery can happen. People are less than. That property is better than morality. I think both of those are promulgated and proliferated by the Democrat Party today. I think when it comes down to using the phrase white supremacy, it's been a very famous phrase. Everybody's at least ought to be familiar with Margaret Sanger now, who was a genuine white supremacist. If you want a very good pointed book, you should get the Death Angel, I think it's called. Death Angel. On Margaret Sanger. But Margaret Sanger was a white supremacist, a eugenicist, and obviously the creator of Planned Parenthood. And her ideals in creating Planned Parenthood was ridding society of human weeds. Less than. Now, you, Derek, and me were a part of that group on the basis of our skin color. Others a part of that group were Jews, the mentally disabled, the physically disabled, human weeds, getting rid of them because they can't contribute to society, but they suck up all of society's resources. Eugenicists. You want to know why there are tests today in hospitals about if your baby will have some type of Down syndrome or some type of thing? Eugenics. That's the origin. Hey, your baby is a bad one. You should discard it. You should at least consider discarding it. Margaret Sanger was a proponent of eugenics, white supremacist eugenics. Now, I don't need to really go further than that, I don't think, because although we have gotten so deep into the lie of quote unquote reproductive health, so ridiculous, that phrase comes from Satan himself. But there is one party that celebrates and proliferates abortion. We're above 63 million babies killed since its inception. Roe v. Wade, I would say. 63 million. That's more than Pol Pot, Hitler, Stalin, and Lenin combined. Please don't believe a word I'm saying. Look it up. Statistics, data, facts. Look them up. That's more. The DNC had a mobile abortion clinic on wheels outside. How is it different? If slavery was that evil, the number of aborted babies just since Roe v. Wade surpasses that significantly. Significantly. So, yeah. Now, I could get deeper into to say that the view of black people amongst the Democrat platform, not Democrats, not every Democrat, but the Democrat platform views black Americans as mudsills of society. That phrase is actually used by a Democrat. Now, granted, this was in the olden times of Democrats, but that mentality still exists. They still view black Americans as their pawns for political gain. So that when you are a black American that doesn't fit that mold, you think for yourself and you don't view the Democrat platform as massa, then they call you out on it as if you stepped out of line. So much comfort exists in this train of thought that Joe Biden was willing to go on a black radio network and tell black Americans they're not black if they've got a question on who to vote for. What I don't think I need to go further than that. Yes, Addie. Killer Angel. There you go. Killer Angel. That's it. Killer Angel. Go get Killer Angel and read that. Go get Killer Angel. Let me keep going. I don't want to get caught up on one thing. Let's get back to it. Okay. Early on, you may say that they're not made. Oh, so he continues. Early on in your podcast during COVID, you spoke about Mike Vick and how he paid his debt. And yet that wasn't enough for the masses. They wanted him to suffer. Is that what you also ask of the Democrat Party and those who follow or vote for them? Now, you may say that they have not made proper recompense for their previous actions, but I would say that isn't true on many levels, many different levels. For one, black people as a whole do better in progressive states. Well, let's stop there really quickly. In New York, there are more black babies killed than born. Your statement's false already. Already it's false. Now, in order for you to maintain your stance, D, is for you to say, well, those aren't humans. And that's the way the enemy works, right? That's the way it works. They do better in progressive states than not. No. Come on, San Fran, Oakland. People buying cribs out there. People buying cribs up in Portland. Come on. New York alone is the argument. There are more black children killed than born. Don't believe me. Look it up. Look it up. I'm from Baltimore. I'm not from I don't know if you're familiar with the area. I'm not from the DC area. I'm not from Columbia. I'm from the city of Baltimore. Baltimore has been progressive and black for a long time as far as leadership. The schools are trash. The government is trash. Now, I haven't lived there in 11 years, and I'm going back now, and we're actually moving on Saturday. So we'll see. But I need you to provide me something on that. I need you to provide me something on that. I mean, look at Chicago, Detroit. I don't even know. Yeah, I'm gonna just keep going on with that. I don't think I can rock with that one. Let me respond to the Mike Vick thing. So what he's commenting on is I made an argument about, I don't know what the basis, but he is obviously following the podcast, because I remember making that statement, and I do feel strongly about that. That I remember when Michael Vick went to prison, and he came out of prison and he was scolded and treated less than because of the dogs. I know we feel strongly about our dogs. I'm not calling that silly or stupid. But if we are such a progressive country, now this was earlier on, before people got hip to wokeness and everything else. But I guarantee you, if Michael Vick committed that act today, then he'd be all right. Because the way they came down on him was everything short of calling him the big N. He had gone to prison. He had lost all his endorsements, and he went to prison for over a year. And then when he came out, he was still receiving slander and everything else. And I brought that up to highlight, are people actually valuing different cultures? What do I mean by that? Though you disagree and I disagree, but I'm from a culture where people do fight dogs for sport. It's a part of the sport. In other cultures, they race horses. You know what happens when the horse is not useful anymore? Yeah, that's real. Once upon a time, greyhound racing. You know what happens when the greyhound's not useful anymore? It's a cultural thing. Cockfighting. You know what happens when the chicken isn't good? Dinner served. So I'm not saying, and this was my argument back then, I was not saying that, it's great that he killed dogs, or he didn't physically kill them. He owned the property that was doing the dog fighting business. But neither here nor there. He's responsible. The fact of the matter is, that's a cultural thing. Like, he wasn't sneaking around like, yo, let's go and kidnap some people's dogs and go try to kill them. No, people breed and bred their dogs to fight them. That's real. They bred them to fight them. They made bets and wagered on them and stuff like that. And when a dog got poorly beat up or something like that and it wasn't useful, it would get killed. That was the reality. And they treated him like dirt for doing that. And that's in a country that lit up New York's buildings in celebration of abortion. All right. So what Derek is pointing out is what I was accusing the world of doing to Michael Vick is that who is this? They don't have the horses fight each other to death, and the greyhounds get adopted by people when they retire. Yeah, the good ones. The good ones. Great. You think every greyhound gets adopted? No. Also, I didn't say the horses fight. They race. They race. Horses get put down all the time. I know people who train horses. I don't know what point you're making. They also bred black people to do work. Does that make it okay? I don't know what your argument is, E Honda. But the point I was highlighting with the Mike Vick thing was, when he served his time, when he was punished and served his time, and he was done serving his time, they still treated him like trash. And what Derek is saying is the Democrat platform has served its time and paid its due penalty for the history of slavery and racism in the country. That's unequivocally false. That's demonstrably false. And so he's accusing me of doing the same thing to the Democrat platform that the country was doing to Michael Vick, and that's not the case. That's not the case at all. The Democrat platform continues to wage war on households, wage war on marriages, and wage war on children. So no. I don't know who Michael Vick is a proponent of regarding the presidency, but that wasn't what I was talking about. That wasn't my point. But yeah, so I disagree with that point as well. And I disagree that I'm doing the same thing to the Democrat platform as that the country did to Michael Vick after he served his time. I was proving a point about Michael Vick, that they treated Michael Vick as less than human for doing a terrible thing, but it's still in the country that celebrates baby murder. So it's interesting. And the hate was so thick for him for killing the dogs, which is a terrible thing, that after he went to prison and got out, he was still hated in society. And I'm just trying to give people a juxtaposition of society and our morals when that's the way he was treated for owning the property where that terrible thing was happening versus how we talk about child murder. Simple argument. You were saying that it's part of the culture to have dog fights, that people raise and breed dogs to fight, so it's okay, right? Well, they bred black people to do work. Same logic. Well, that's a straw man, my guy. I didn't say it's okay. I'm saying the country and progressives claim to be a part or cognizant of different cultures and accepting of different cultures and recognizing different perspectives. Meanwhile, they failed to recognize that dog fighting is a cultural thing. I didn't say it was okay, but I'm from that culture. I still didn't think it was okay then. I owned dogs. I loved my dog I grew up with. I didn't fight them, but it's a cultural thing. There are a lot of things that are cultural, but I agree with you, E. Honda. Just because it's cultural doesn't make it objectively right. So that's not my argument. So, yeah, moving on. Let me try to go down a little bit and get to some other things he was saying. He said a lot. I missed a lot, man. I'm sorry if you listen to this. I missed a whole lot. And look, in his respect right here, he said, I reread my comment and felt it was rude to just come in that way I did. That I appreciate that, but I'm glad. You straight shooter. You came straight with it, so I'm okay with that. I want you to know how I got to your podcast. As a UPS driver, I had to find things to listen to while on the road. I came across your podcast by simply putting Black into the search bar. I really love listening to and supporting Black podcasts. After the first 4 episodes, I was hooked. I grew up that kid who wasn't Black enough for the Black kids around me because I enjoyed Dragon Ball Z and singing opera. When you guys had the music episode, I was singing the whole time. You made me re-listen to the Prince of Egypt soundtrack, greatest soundtrack in animated history. I'm putting it there. It's above Lion King. Fight me. By the end of the podcast, I felt as though I was wrapped in a warm blanket. I felt safe. You were down the middle and only showing favoritism to God while condemning both sides. But somewhere along the line, that switched. I missed the episodes where y'all would talk about yourselves because I could hear my life in your stories. Well, here's the thing about that, bro. First of all, I appreciate you sharing that, and what drew you to the podcast. But the thing is this, I don't believe I don't know what down the middle even means anymore. I don't know what that means. However, we're Christian unequivocally. We've always been that way. And we say explicitly, and when I say we, if you're not familiar with Black and Blur podcast, my brother Darren also co-hosts with me. When I say we, I mean, we're Christian. And by Christian, our worldview is this, that God made the world and everything in it, and everything that he made is from him. We also believe that Jesus, who is the visible image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation, that for him and through him and by him, all things are made. And there isn't anything made that hasn't been made through him. That he is before all things, firstborn from the dead, so that in all things he would be preeminent. So even when we start to have conversations about politics, our politics aren't rooted in quote unquote politics, it's rooted in our faith. So the conversations around things that are called political, like marriage, that is a creation ordinance. It's not a state ordinance. It's not even a Christian ordinance. It's a creation ordinance, something for humankind that God made for his glory, that has a definition that cannot be torn down. And the moment you redefine it, you aren't giving it a new definition. You're tearing down the old one, and that's it. That's our stance. People identify that as a political conversation. We don't. When it comes down to sexuality, which is directly linked to the aforementioned conversation, another ordinance, another God-given thing, a God-given thing for his glory. It's for reproduction, but it's also for enjoyment. That's how good God is, that he makes beneficial things enjoyable. But what we do as sinful human beings is we want all the enjoyableness out of it, no consequence. The same thing with food. This good God made our bodies need fuel. And in his eternal mind, he said, when they fuel their bodies, make it enjoyable, that they can taste things and enjoy things. And then what do? I just want to eat, gluttony. We do that with every good thing. And we have a platform that is proliferating good things and proliferating good things to be abused, and it's proliferating abject evil things. There's nothing good about abortion. Now, one of those good things is child life. That's a life in general. Life is good, but we abuse it. Abuse happens. Sexual immorality happens. You know, very interesting piece of irony is that the same platform that promotes sexual licentiousness and sexual freedom is the same platform that then will give you the excuse, well, what about incest for abortion? Are you implying that incest is evil? Are you implying that rape is evil? Because if you're implying that they're evil, then you're implying that there ought to be boundaries around our sexual proclivities. But it's the same platform that says remove the boundaries for sexual proclivities. We've removed it completely. And we treat morality as if it's this sliding meter where you get to slide it to a certain point and stop it. No, it's not that. It's a door. You either have it closed or you have it open. And when you redefine marriage and when you promote sexual licentiousness, which is not the Democrat thing, it's our world, our fallen world that promotes it. When you open that door, anything can come through. And that's what we're seeing in society. So that is what our podcast is about. And it's still to the glory of God. We highlight the fact that Black Americans in this country are blinded on a thick wall of idolatry. And the main object of that idolatry is their skin. Where it's so much so that, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, the common weapon wielded against Black Americans by other Black Americans is that I'm going to tell you you're not Black if you don't agree with me. And all it takes is for a person to no longer identify with their skin color. And the best way to do that is to identify as a son and a daughter of the Lord. That's the best way. Because I know who I am. I'm a son of the King. I'm a son of the ruler of the cosmos. And as a bonus, he has given me a pigmentation that glorifies him. But as another bonus, there's a bunch of other different pigmentations around the world that glorify him. Even the pigmentations that haven't seen the external world yet and are still in their womb. Democrat platform disagrees with me on that. And so we're vocal about it. And we became way more vocal because during the COVID time, if you remember, everybody remembers, truth wasn't a good guy during the COVID time. Everybody not only was saying something's deceptive, but then you had people fighting against you because you had questions. I wasn't trumpeting the truth at that time. I was asking questions during COVID. And if you asked questions, people started slandering you. It's crazy. So our podcast became very explicit in just telling the truth. What was the truth about COVID? Well, they're lying and they're trying to get you afraid. They're trying to grow and galvanize obeisance in the citizens so that whenever government says jump, if you don't ask how high, you're not only a bad citizen, you're a bad neighbor. And you're not loving like Jesus. It was ridiculous. And it's been nothing but lie after deceptive statement after deceptive statement since. And obviously way long before then too. Let me read a couple more things and then I'll get to you guys' comments. Let me make it bigger again so you can see. I'm kind of, I think he started talking about the party switching. Um, let me see. Let me see. Sorry. I grew up a kid. Da, 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 da. I created my life in your stories. Yep, I got that. I got that. Hey, I have more information on the whole idea that the parties never switched. While you still remain factually correct, the parties never said we're going to be Republican. Now you're going to be Democrat. There was a switch in ideals. So in the 60s, we see Republicans consistently losing local offices. So they begin to make an appeal to Southern voters who at the time were majority Democrat. They be, in the 60s, I'm gonna have to look into that. I doubt that. I mean, even Martin Luther King was a registered Republican. They begin what is known as the Southern strategy. They begin to make racism seem as though it was neutral. Republican National Convention Chairman Lee Atwater actually stated, "You start out in 1964 saying, I typically say this word only because it's a word, doesn't have any power, but every word has power on YouTube now. By 1965, you say in. By 1965, you can't say in. That hurts you, backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract. Now you're talking about cutting taxes and all those things. You're talking about are totally economic things, and a byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. We want to cut this is much more abstract than even the busing. I'm having a hard time following that. Maybe it's because I'm having a hard time reading it too, but I guess he's trying to highlight that the parties never switched, that the Republican Party is really the racist party or something like that. But I don't know. I have to read through that because I'm kind of rushing through it. Republicans blocked a bill to secure the border under Biden, but Republicans voted against it so they could have political standing to help them in the election, since Trump only has concepts of a plan. Yeah, that's politics. It's disgusting. The fact that there is a perpetual divide in our government is why we're in the state we're in now. That's politics. However, I will say this. It's absolutely, I think it's completely evident that when Trump first ran, they used the wall thing as an argument to show his xenophobic and racist nature. Did they not? But did they not use that as an argument to show that Donald Trump was xenophobic and racist? That's deception. So it's not a matter of people doing politics and using political sleight of hand. That's politics. I hate all of it. That's what I responded to him with. That's what I said. But the deception is this, that the same arguments that Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama used regarding our illegal immigration issue, Donald Trump suggested we do something about it. And they torched him for it. And then torched everybody who agreed, yeah, we should build a wall. We should do something. And then they ran on that. And then torched him for it for 4 years while they, prosecution and this thing and Russian collusion. I mean, it was a mess. So I don't know what he's highlighting and bringing that up. Actually, I don't know exactly what he's highlighting. But yeah, the wall thing was common sense, and we see it now. People are suffering because of it. You might not care because, and I'm not saying you, Derek, I'm talking about people who listen and you, Derek, but yeah, you might not care because you don't feel it, but there are people who have lost loved ones to illegal immigrants. There are people who are being displaced from homes because of illegal immigrants. There are legal immigrants whose processes have been pushed back further because of illegal immigration. So, once again, you're not allowed to care about that. You're not allowed to think about that because they've deemed it xenophobic and racist if you care about something like that. I think that's just ridiculous. Last thing. I was telling him that I was late on some reading with his comments. So he said that's more. He says, I hate both parties. They have us fighting, then they have dinner together behind closed doors. They are the same ish. One wears blue and one wears red. But I don't think a border just like banning abortion is going to fix the human issues we have in this world. There's water next to the border. The wall just ends up being an expensive symbol and not the solution we desire. Banning abortion will, in short, start small. Banning abortion will, in short, start small business around the country because we haven't fixed the human problem of life in this country. So banning is not the solution. It's just another symbol, not a solution. And, you know, I hear that often when it comes down to talking about banning. So for two things I'll say. One, if that is true, if it's true that banning isn't the solution, is proliferating it the solution, is promulgating it the solution, is putting the platform in power that wants to see it grow more and more in this country the solution, that can't be the solution. that absolutely can't be the solution. That's the first thing. The second thing is this: putting murderers in jail won't fix murder. Putting thieves in jail, it won't fix theft. And that's what churches ought to realize. And you know, he brings up a good point, because I think that there are some Christians in specific sects of Christianity that do believe we are supposed to change the society. Now, there are aspects of it that we are meant to promote flourishing. We are meant to be an outpost of heaven as the church here in this world, being in it and not of it, that we would let our good works shine so much so that people would see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven. So there is that. But then when it comes down to the way I vote, I'm not voting to cure abortion. I'm voting to be faithful. That's what it is. In the same way that my faithfulness means that I would never want someone to get an abortion as a believer. I would never help someone get an abortion as a believer. I would never root someone on or high five someone who is getting an abortion. Love doesn't do that. Love doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13. So I would never do that. In the same vein, I would never scold somebody and call them out of their name because they've had an abortion. But they will know the truth about abortion, and then they'll also know the truth about God's grace offered in Jesus Christ. That's what a Christian does, faithful. I cannot be a faithful believer and support the Democrat platform. Okay, let's look at some of your comments. We are Addie, at the top, you said that's sad. The sad part, TDS has people voting against their Christian values. Who's TDS? Maybe I'm lost in the conversation a little bit, but yeah, TDS. Who's TDS? Yes, both parties are dropping the ball on abortion because it's becoming a hot topic where it's about social capital. And people don't want their social capital to drop. But as Christians, we're called to be faithful. Be faithful. Because at the end of the day, you are not going to stand face to face with the people you talk to in this earth. You're going to stand face to face with your maker in death. And he's judge. And if you are in Christ, then his rightful, lawful, just judgment of you will have fallen on Jesus. And you are received as a son if you trust in Christ. But if you have not trusted in Christ, then you'll answer for everything. And you might think that that's small potatoes, but it's not. It's not. And we need more churches telling people that instead of out here trying to be the next Martin Luther King, looking like a bunch of buffoons. Philip, I didn't vote in 2016 because I didn't understand Trump. I wanted Rand Paul and didn't think Trump understood economics. I didn't understand negotiation and the use of levers like tariffs. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a realization that Sowell made, in that he thought that Trump was very economically savvy as president of the United States. Obviously, he didn't think he was a fool because he's a businessman, but he thought that he did a good job economically with the states. It's not trade that matters; it's the sharing of ideas. I can't remember what I was talking about like that, but I think on the face, I agree with that. I can't remember the context. Let's go down. Yep. That's correct. Margaret Sanger and eugenics, evil, white supremacists. I'm talking about real white supremacy, not Uncle Ben on the rice and Aunt Jemima on the syrup white supremacy. What type of stuff? And that's the stuff they acted on. They took Uncle Ben off the rice. They took Aunt Jemima off the syrup. And I know that syrup tastes different now. I know it does. But I'm a king syrup dude anyway. But yeah, it's real white supremacy. Killer Angel. Go read that because it's got a lot of great quotes from Margaret Sanger. G.K. Chesterton was a contemporary of Margaret Sanger, and he was a Christian who fought against that. And today, the language that we hear of other Christians, when, say I'm talking about abortion and you have a Christian that'll come alongside and be like, you got to be winsome in the way you talk about it. Like, bro, we got babies out here dying. And you worried about policing my syntax? Man. It's a cowardice generation, this is. All right, I'm not going to get angry in this episode. Philip said, read Hitler's Monsters. Germany was really into the occult. Uh-oh, you're getting deep. I like it, though. And racial aspect of the Nazis was much more complicated than just white as Indians were also Aryan because of Germanic land origin or Germanic language origin. Yeah. They're Caucasian. They're from the Caucasus Mountains. But going to your thing about Germany, we're getting into biblical proportions now when we talk about the occult and we talk about what they were actually looking into, what they were in contact with, what were the motivations, what were their motivations. But then also Hitler called one of Margaret Sanger's contemporaries and business partners, who was a eugenicist and a racist and a white supremacist. He called his works his Bible. Hitler and Margaret Sanger didn't merely share ideas. Margaret Sanger's ideas discipled Hitler. They discipled him. Let that sink in for a little bit. All the trash cities are and have been run by Democrats. Correct. Dude, F Mike Vick, don't hurt dogs, and you are a POS if you think it's okay to have dog fights. You're emoting a little bit there, bro. You gotta rewind and play back the point of the conversation. Yeah, dog fighting isn't a great thing. However, people do it. I get that you're upset about it, but people do it. People do it. Let's go down to some others. Get some new comments. Trump is coming in, baby. We will see. We will see. Anybody else skeptical of what's going to happen? Anybody else worried? I'll tell you this, though, for the believers, this is true for everybody. Whoever wins the presidency, that'll be God's pick. I'm not saying because they're doing God's will. I'm saying that there has never been a president of the United States that God didn't allow to sit in that seat. He's sovereign. Trust that. Trust that. You spammed my comments there, Jerry. I appreciate it. The border bill had a poison pill in it. It was a horrendous bill that Mitch McConnell allowed a senator to negotiate, and it was horrible. It didn't stop, but instead basically created citizens. I agree. And there are a lot of things that go into these bills that it's so deceptive and it's clandestine. It's ridiculous. They smuggle a bunch of things in, and there are things happening in the back doors. I mean, when we think about the Equality Act, listen to that word, the Equality Act. There is a lot that's smuggled into that Christians ought to be wary of. Pastors, doctors who are Christians, lawyers, all of that stuff that you ought to be wary of regarding seeing it move forward in the country. Oh, okay. I see. TDS. I'm not cool, guys. Apparently, I'm not cool. Trump derangement syndrome. It's a very real thing. It's a very real thing. And I want to be very serious, and I'll close out with this because I think what we're commenting on is Addie up top said that Trump derangement syndrome has people going against their Christian values, and it's true. Has people going against their very family. Going against their very family. That should tell you something. It's not about Trump. It's about the morality of it. And you should stay tuned in the podcast because I'm actually going to walk people down the journey of how I'm ended up going back to Baltimore and why I'm going back to plant a church. But when it comes down to this country and the idols in this country, there are many idols in this country, and a sub group in this country are Black Americans, and the idol is blackness. And in this idol is smuggled a lot of other small idols that people can't even keep track of. And these elections bring those idols out. They bring them out to the point where if you're actually viewing this from the lens of a citizen and you want to see what's best for the flourishing of the country, and if you think of or say anything that goes against the prescriptive thought process of a Black American, then people will turn away from you. Program number one, whoever is Black, vote for them. Sub-program number one, if they are Black and they don't say the right Black stuff, hate them. Growing up in Baltimore City, going to public schools, we had Ben Carson's posters everywhere. Think big. It said, think big. Even for our 5th grade graduation, we sang this song, Think Big. I mean, Ben Carson was a hero until he opened his mouth. Then he became an idiot that fast because he didn't talk the way he was commanded to talk. That's our society. And that's just one of the idols. So yes, Trump derangement syndrome is actually way far greater than Trump derangement. It's a moral repugnance. Because there are people who have never met Kamala and will never meet Kamala yet. If you don't vote for Kamala, then people who know and love you will turn on you and hate you. It's sad. It's sad. But I say we stay the course. Stay the course. I agree. It's hypnosis. But I'm signing off, guys. I'm signing off. It's been a long week. I thank you guys for rocking with me this long. Stay tuned for our new episodes coming up. We are also, as a matter of fact, we are going to be on with Veritas, Truth Constance, during the election, doing a live stream with her during the election. I'll be posting a link on our Patreon and on Instagram so you can know how to tune into that stuff. What else do you need to stay tuned for? Yeah. We've got some other things, some changes coming up as well, just with the transition and things like that. And but I'll be updating you guys on that properly so you can know what to look out for. But we love you guys. We love your support. Thank you guys for the encouragement. People who always send messages, DMs of encouragement, who've been tracking with us, who pray for us, pray with us. We love you guys. Stay firm, stay vigilant, stay faithful. Let your light shine. We love you guys. I'll see you.